Okay, good morning, class. Today we're going to be doing history. We are on Unit 3, Lesson 16, Section 3. Okay, Section 3 is the prince discovers 3 forms of suffering. So I want you guys to think about the title. Section 3, the prince discovers 3 forms of suffering. So our prediction question for today is, what do you think the 3 main sufferings were that the prince encountered outside of the palace? So I want you guys to take a minute and think, what forms of suffering do you think the prince saw? Because remember, he's been sheltered all his life in this big palace. He went outside and he discovered 3 forms of suffering. Okay? I want you guys to take a minute. I want you to think, what is one form of suffering that you can think of that you think the prince encountered? Bella?
Death.
Death, okay. NJ?
Old age.
Old age, okay. A chance? We're just making predictions. Sickness? Okay. Abel?
Hunger.
Hunger, okay. Anybody else? Okay. Let's go ahead and watch our video.
When Siddhartha was 29, the king gave him more freedom to travel outside the royal palaces. According to Buddhist tradition, during his journeys, the prince encountered 3 forms of suffering: aging, sickness, and death. He became deeply troubled. Suddenly, Siddhartha's royal life seemed empty. So one night, the prince asked his driver to take him to the forest, and he removed his royal robes, sandals, and jewels. He cut off his hair with a knife, put on a simple robe, and carried only a small bowl for alms or gifts of food. Wishing his driver farewell, Siddhartha began his life as an ascetic, a person who gives up all worldly pleasures. Siddhartha met other ascetics who believed they could reach enlightenment through meditation. They even denied themselves basic necessities like sleep, shelter, and food. Siddhartha followed the ascetics, but he became terribly thin from lack of food. He became so thin that he could touch his stomach and feel his backbone,
You guys
yet
see
he
his
still
ribs
had
and how
not
skinny
found
he was right there?
enlightenment.
That's really skinny. Okay. So if I can have you all look up here at the TV, this word ascetic, okay? Ascetic is one of our vocabulary words that we are going to see in today's lesson. And I want you guys to look at the definition. A person who gives up worldly pleasures. Can you guys think about one worldly pleasure? What do you think a worldly pleasure is? Chance?
To have money.
Okay, to have money. Okay, NJ?
To go on like a cruise.
To go on like a cruise. Okay. Anybody else? No? Okay. So, in our reading today, I want everybody on this page, please. Section 3. The prince discovers 3 forms of suffering. When Siddhartha was 29, the king gave him more freedom to travel outside the royal palace. According to the Buddhist tradition, during his journey, the prince encountered 3 forms of suffering. On his first trip, the prince and his chariot driver saw a thin man walking with the aid of a stick. "Why does that man look so terrible?" the prince asked. His driver replied, "That man was old, and that everybody's body weakens with age." NJ, can you please take over?
Mm-hmm. On the second trip, the prince and his driver saw a man lying on the ground, crying out in pain. "What is the matter with that poor man?" the prince asked. The driver explained that the man was sick.
Xavier, can you go ahead and take over?
On the third trip, the prince spotted a group of people walking slowly down the road carrying a corpse. Death came for that man. Siddhartha, the driver, said quietly, "One day I will come for you too." The discovery of aging, sickness, and death deeply touched troubled the prince. Unable to sit at home with his thoughts, he set out fourth time when he met a man who glowed with inner peace and calm. The man was ascetic, a person who gives up worldly pleasures such as possession, fine clothes, and money, and even shelter.
Thank you. How can you sit there so peacefully when there is so much suffering in the world around you? The prince questioned the man. The ascetic replied, to be free of suffering, one must give up the desires, pleasures, and comforts of the world. I find peace by helping others find peace. Okay? So I want you guys to go ahead. We are going to go back through the reading because there's a few key points that I want you guys to save, okay? So in the first paragraph, it says, according to Buddhist tradition, during his journey, the prince encountered 3 forms of suffering. Let's go ahead and highlight that blue, please. Because this is what our lesson is talking about, right? The 3 forms of suffering, okay? There's 3. And in the second paragraph, it says, his driver replied that the man was old and that everybody's body weakens with age. So that's the first suffering that the prince saw, okay? Old age. Go ahead and highlight that green, please. And now in the third paragraph, it says, what is the matter with that poor man? The prince asked. The driver explained the man was sick. Now that describes sickness. So go ahead and highlight that in orange. Okay, and in the fourth paragraph, in quotations, it says, death came for that man. Siddhartha's driver said quietly, one day it will come for you too. Go ahead and highlight that in pink. This is describing the other suffering that the prince saw, which is death. I know this is on somewhat of a deeper level, but in the quotations it says, death came for that man. Siddhartha's driver said quietly, one day it will come for you too. What do you think that means? NJ?
One day he will die too.
Okay. Xavier, is that what you were going to say too? Okay. Yeah, death is a really heavy thing, right? So, unfortunately, in our reading, it does talk about it, but it's okay to talk about it with me if you'd like. Okay, and in the fifth paragraph, in the first sentence, it says, the discovery of aging, sickness, and death deeply troubled the prince. Unable to sit at home with his thoughts, he set out fourth time, where he met a man that glowed with inner peace and calm. The man was ascetic, a person who gives up worldly pleasures such as possessions, fine clothes, money, and even shelter. Okay, I want you to highlight the first sentence in purple, from the to prince. And then our vocab word aesthetic, I want you to highlight all of that yellow. This part where it says aesthetic, our vocab word, that's actually going to help with our reading check answers. I'll give you guys a couple minutes to catch up and then we'll do our reading check. Okay, now I want you guys to take a look up at the screen. This picture, or this mural, is in a Buddhist temple in eastern Thailand. Shows Siddhartha outside the palace walls where he learned about the 3 forms of suffering: aging, sickness, and death. Which of these can you see here? So I'll start the first one. There is possibly an old person that has passed on right here, so that would assume, I would assume that's death, right? Does anybody see another one? Richard?
The guy in like the shorts, he's hungry.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Maybe hunger or sickness, right? Okay. Anybody else? Abel?
The guy in orange is an aesthetic.
Good eye. Yes, the guy in the orange is the aesthetic. Yes, that is the peace and the calm guy, right? So, with that being said, let's go do our reading check. So, what are some things an ascetic might do? Okay, we're looking for 4 answers here. We have meditate often, stop drinking soda, go on peaceful vacations, wear inexpensive clothing, collect Buddhist art, or give up their cell phones. I need 4 answers, please. Bella?
Stop drinking soda.
Okay, next. Kayla?
Meditate often.
Okay, Goku?
Wear inexpensive clothes.
Okay, Jaren?
Which one do we have?
We have stop drinking soda, meditate often, wear inexpensive clothing.
Give up your cell phone.
Give up their cell phone. Okay, ready? Submit. 4 out of 4. Thank you very much. Okay, make sure you have all 4 answers. Match those 4 answers, please. Make sure you press your purple submit button so it's turned in. Any questions so far or any comments so far? We good? Okay. Now, for your activity today, the picture you see here is going to look familiar at that picture I showed you at the top of the reading. Okay? What you are going to do, this picture right here is what I'm talking about. That's going to be your activity today. You are going to basically describe to me what you see in this picture. You are going to start with your headline. Can somebody give me an example of what they would name this drawing or painting? What headline would you give it? Yes.
The discovering.
The discovering.
The princess of the 3 forms of suffering.
Perfect. Anybody else? Does anybody else have a different one? No? The prince what?
Sees the world suffering.
Okay, the prince sees the world suffering. I like it. Anybody else? Galilea? The 3 sufferings. I like it. Okay. Goku?
The prince discovers pain.
The prince discovers pain. I like that one too. Perfect. So, go ahead and get your headline written down. That's step 1. Step 1 is your headline, okay? So you're going to create a short headline that captures what the scene, why the scene is important. Now step 2. It says on or around the image, label 3 or more key details in the scene. Okay, earlier you guys were just telling me what you saw in the picture, right? We saw suffering, we saw an aesthetic. So go ahead and label what you see in this picture. I need at least 3. At least 3 things you see in this picture I need labeled.
Go back. To the reading check? What was your head on? You gonna make one? Gotta kill that or you need it still?
Okay. No rush, you guys. I'm just gonna read you step 3. So step 3, below the image, you have a caption area right here, okay? This is where you need to write me 2 to 3 sentences that describes what is happening in the scene. So I need 2 to 3 sentences in your words about what you see happening in the scene, which we've already talked about. So you guys just need to put it into your own words. Maybe talk about seeing the aesthetic, talking about seeing the forms of suffering, talk about the prince and his chariot. There's a few things you guys can talk about for those 2 to 3 sentences, okay? Does anybody have any questions for me? Or any comments? You guys want to add anything to this? No? Okay. Also, please remember to press in that purple turn-in button once you are finished with your activity. Refresh the page, and then it should.
Okay.
Did it work? Okay, perfect. Yeah. Are you ahead? Are you? You're ahead. Okay. Any questions? Any questions? You're raising your hand, Danica, you're just stretching. Raising your hand, Danica, you're stretching. Oh, okay. You finished, Lila?
Okay, that's fine. Just for the charges and the typical.
Any questions, Stephen? You good? Did you get your headline? Take your hood off. Joshua, take your hood off.
Peace and calm.
And Jim, I'm asking you.
Okay.
Okay, as you guys are finishing up, I'm gonna go ahead and ask you, a couple of you, for your caption sentences. NJ, can you go ahead and give us yours, please?
My caption was, in this photo, the prince is learning about the 3 forms of suffering from the sheriff driver.
Okay. Anybody else? Let's see. Kayla, go ahead and share yours, please.
The prince discovered pain as in death, hunger, and
Ascetic? Yeah. Yes. Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, good job, guys. Let's go ahead and move on to section 4.